The mahogany table felt cold under my fingertips. It was the same table where my father had taught me how to read a balance sheet when I was 12. Now, 6 months after his funeral, it was the chopping block where my execution was being signed. "It's not personal, Leo," Marcus said, leaning back in Dad's leather chair. He didn't fit in it. The chair was too big, and Marcus was too small, not in stature, but in presence. He spun a gold pen between his fingers, a nervous habit he'd had since we were kids. "It's just business. The board we feel, that the company needs a new direction. A modern face." I looked at him. My half-brother. The golden child who had spent his 20s partying in Ibiza while I was here, in the trenches, fixing the supply chains he broke. "A modern face?" I asked, my voice rasping slightly. I hadn't slept in 2 days, trying to salvage the mess Marcus had made of the Tokyo deal. "Marcus, I just closed the contract with the logistics firm. Revenue is up 40% this quarter because of my strategy." "Revenue is boring, darling," Elena chimed in from the corner. My stepmother. She was inspecting her nails, looking bored by the dismantling of my life. "We're talking about brand identity. Look at you. You wear flannel. You drive a truck. You don't scream luxury developer. You scream contractor." She stood up and walked over, placing a manicured hand on my shoulder. It felt like a spider landing on me. "We're doing you a favor, really," she whispered. "You were never happy here. You always liked the dirt, the construction sites. Now you can go play in the mud full-time." I pulled away from her touch. "You're voting me out? On what grounds?" "Inefficiency," Marcus said quickly, sliding a thick document across the table. "And irreconcilable differences in vision. We have the votes, Leo. Elena has her 20%. I have my 20%. And Uncle Jerry, well, Jerry likes his dividends, so he sided with us. That's 50% plus 1. Majority rules." I looked at the document. Termination of employment and share buyback agreement. They weren't just firing me. They were trying to force me to sell my minority stake. "The buyback price is insulting," I said, scanning the numbers. "This is pennies on the dollar. The company is worth 10 times this. It's a fair market offer for a minority shareholder with no leverage," their lawyer, Mr. Henderson, said from the end of the table. He refused to meet my eyes. He knew this was a robbery. "Take the check, Leo. If you fight this in court, they'll bury you in legal fees for a decade. You'll end up with nothing." I looked around the room. The office I practically grew up in. The framed photos of my father on the wall, photos where I was usually in the background, holding the blueprints while Marcus smiled for the camera. I remembered the last conversation I had with my father, just days before the heart attack took him. We were sitting on the porch. He looked tired. "I made a mistake with them, Leo," he had said, his voice weak. "I gave them too much too soon. They don't respect the work. They only love the fruit, not the tree. I'll look after them, Dad," I had promised. "No," he had gripped my hand with surprising strength. "Don't look after them. Look after the legacy. And when the time comes, remind them who actually built this house." I didn't understand what he meant back then. I thought he was just being sentimental. But now, looking at Marcus's smug grin and Elena's predatory eyes, the fog lifted. "So that's it?" I asked, closing the folder. "I signed this and I'm gone?" "You sign, you take your little check, and you never set foot in this building again," Marcus said. "I want your keycard on the table. And get that eyesore of a truck off the company lot by noon. I'm parking my Porsche there." I felt a strange calmness wash over me. It was the calm of a man who realizes he isn't the one trapped in the room with the tiger. He is the tiger. I reached into my pocket. Marcus flinched, probably expecting me to throw something. Elena took a step back. But I just pulled out my phone. "I need to make one call before I sign," I said. "Call your therapist?" Marcus laughed. "Go ahead. Cry it out." "No," I said, dialing a number that wasn't in the company directory. "I'm calling the archivist at the Central Trust Bank." The laughter in the room died instantly. Mr. Henderson, the lawyer, sat up straighter. Why would you call the trust bank? The estate is settled. The will was read 6 months ago. The public will was read 6 months ago, I corrected him. The one that distributed the cash and the cars. Hello? I spoke into the phone. Mr. Sterling? It's Leo. Yes. It's happening. They called the vote. Activate the founder's protocol. I hung up. Marcus stood up, his face losing its color. What protocol? What are you talking about? Dad didn't trust you, Marcus, I said softly. He knew you'd do this. He knew the moment he was gone, you and Elena would try to strip the company for parts to fund your lifestyle. You're lying! Elena shrieked. He left us the shares. 40% between us. We have the majority. You have 40% of the common stock, I explained, standing up and buttoning my flannel jacket. Class B shares. Voting rights, yes, but diluted. I walked over to the safe behind my father's desk. The one Marcus had never been able to open because he never bothered to ask for the combination. I spun the dial. Left 19. Right 84. Left 12. My birthday. The heavy steel door swung open with a hiss. Inside sat a single, leather-bound ledger. But Dad kept the Class A preferred shares for himself, I continued, pulling the ledger out. 51% of the controlling interest. And he didn't leave them to you. I slammed the ledger onto the table. Dust motes danced in the silence. He left them in a dormant trust, to be released only to the beneficiary who could provide the code to this safe. I opened the book to the last page. My name was already printed there, signed by my father 3 years ago. I am the majority shareholder, I said. And I have a few motions I'd like to propose. Marcus stared at the leather-bound ledger as if it were a bomb. He laughed, a high-pitched, nervous sound that echoed in the silent boardroom. You really expect us to believe this? Marcus scoffed, reaching for the book. It's a prop. A fake. You probably wrote that in the car on the way over. I slammed my hand down on the ledger before he could touch it. The sound was like a gunshot. Don't touch the company archives, Marcus, I said, my voice low and dangerous. Mr. Henderson? You're the corporate counsel. You witnessed my father's signature 1,000 times. Tell them. Henderson, the lawyer who had been smugly advising me to surrender 5 minutes ago, looked pale. He was sweating. He knew that if this document was real, he had just aided in an attempted coup against the majority shareholder. Henderson reached out with a trembling hand. He opened the ledger. He adjusted his glasses. He scanned the page, tracing the embossed seal at the bottom. The room held its breath. Well? Elena snapped. Tell him it's a forgery so we can call security. Henderson swallowed hard. He looked up at me, fear in his eyes. Then he looked at Marcus. It's authentic, Henderson whispered. The seal matches the 1998 incorporation documents. And the signature, it has the tremor. The one your father developed in his final months. This was signed 3 days before he died. That's impossible. Elena shrieked, standing up. He was on morphine. He wasn't lucid. He was lucid enough to know who the vultures were, I said. I walked around the table. I walked toward the head of the table, the chair Marcus was still occupying. Get up, I said. Marcus looked at me, trying to summon some of his usual bravado. I'm the CEO, Leo. Even if you have shares, the board appointed me. You can't just... I own 51% of the voting stock, I interrupted. That means I am the board. I am the quorum. And I am the vote. I leaned down, putting my face inches from his. Get out of my chair. Marcus scrambled up. He moved so fast he knocked the leather chair into the wall. He retreated behind Elena, looking like a scolded child. I sat down. The leather was still warm, but it felt right. It felt like home. Mr. Henderson, I said, spinning the chair to face the lawyer. Take the minutes. The meeting is now called to order. Yes, Mr. Chairman, Henderson said, opening his laptop with frantic speed. Motion 1, I announced. Immediate removal of the current CEO for gross negligence and fiduciary irresponsibility. Negligence? Marcus shouted from the corner. I've been visionary. You lost the Tokyo contract, I listed, ticking off fingers. You spent $200,000 on client entertainment in Vegas, clients who never signed. And you insulted the logistics team, causing a walkout last month. I looked at him. You're not a visionary, Marcus. You're a liability. You're fired. Effective immediately. You can't do that, Marcus yelled, looking at Elena. Mom! Do something! Elena stepped forward, her eyes narrowing into slits. Fine. Fire him. But you can't touch me. I have my 20%. I have a seat on this board for life. Your father promised me. He promised you a seat as long as you acted in the company's best interest, I corrected. I pulled another document from the safe, a thin blue file. This is the internal audit from last week, I said. The one you tried to bury. Elena went rigid. It shows transfers from the company marketing budget to a private account under the name Lux Interiors, I read aloud. That's your interior design firm, isn't it, Elena? I was consulting, she stammered. I was redesigning the lobby. You were siphoning cash, I said. $3 million over 2 years. That's embezzlement, Elena. That's a felony. I tossed the file onto the table. It slid across the mahogany and stopped right in front of her. Motion 2, I said to Henderson. Removal of board member Elena Vance for cause. And the immediate freezing of her dividends to recoup stolen assets. Elena looked at the file, then at me. Her face crumpled. The arrogant socialite vanished, replaced by a terrified woman realizing the ATM had just eaten her card. Leo, please, she whispered, her voice trembling. We're family. We can work this out. Don't involve the police. Think of the scandal. The scandal? I laughed. Elena, you called me a contractor. You told me to go play in the mud. I stood up. Well, things get dirty in the mud. And I'm not the one who needs to worry about the laundry bill. I pointed to the door. Security is waiting in the lobby. They have a box for your personal items. I suggest you hurry. If you're not out of the building in 10 minutes, I'm handing that audit file to the district attorney. Marcus looked at Elena. Elena looked at Marcus. They realized, simultaneously, that the safety net was gone. This isn't over, Marcus shouted, his voice cracking as he backed toward the door. I'll sue. I'll tell the press you stole the company. Go ahead, I said, sitting back and putting my boots, my muddy, contractor boots, up on the mahogany table. Tell them the black sheep finally sheared the flock. I'm sure it'll make a great headline. They ran. They actually ran. The heavy doors slammed shut behind them, leaving silence in the room. I looked at Henderson. He was typing furiously, trying to look indispensable. Mr. Henderson, I said. He froze. Yes, sir? You drew up that termination agreement they tried to make me sign, didn't you? I was acting on the instructions of the CEO at the time, he stammered. It was just standard procedure. You're fired too, I said. Pack your things. Henderson slumped. He closed his laptop and walked out without a word. I was alone. I looked at the portrait of my father on the wall. He wasn't smiling in the photo, but for the first time, I could swear there was a twinkle in his eye. The phone on the desk rang. It was the receptionist. Mr. Sterling? She asked, stumbling over the name change. I mean, Leo? There's a team from the logistics division downstairs. They heard shouting. They want to know who's in charge. I picked up the handset. I looked at the ledger. I looked at the view of the city my father had helped build. Send them up, Sarah, I said. Tell them the manager is back. And tell them we're getting back to work. Epilogue 6 months later. The Porsche was gone from the executive spot. In its place stood my truck, still dusty, still practical. I walked through the lobby. The company was thriving. We had closed the Tokyo deal, and the stock price had doubled. As I checked my emails, I saw a notification from the legal department. Bankruptcy filing, Marcus Vance. Apparently, without the company card, Marcus couldn't keep up with his lifestyle. He was currently trying to launch a podcast about business strategy, which had 12 listeners. And Elena? She avoided jail by selling her condo to pay back the embezzlement, but she was now living in a small apartment across town, complaining to anyone who would listen about how she was robbed of her throne. I deleted the email. I walked into the boardroom. The team was waiting. They didn't care about my boots. They didn't care about my flannel. They cared that the company was standing strong. My father was right. They loved the fruit, but they forgot about the tree. I watered the tree. And now the harvest was all mine.